For those of you who may be joining us online, I'm putting fresh batteries in the microphone, and then we'll be right back.
That work for most people, and if there's
everything goes into the mix.
Understood. All right. And Jeremy, for folks,
Do you want a hands-free one?
that's okay. For folks who are joining online, how can they get this? Can they?
I will email it to them.
Okay.
I'm not sure if we'll have anybody online, to be honest.
Okay.
You might be able to put the PDF with the YouTube video.
Yeah, I could also put it in the description.
There you go.
I could do both.
It's a great idea. Yeah. Okay. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. Hi, for anybody joining us online. You may see me waving around a piece of paper. This is going to be linked as a PDF in the YouTube description, and Jeremy's going to email it out upon request or maybe put it in a newsletter. So if you need a handout and you're online, that's the deal. But I'll start with a brief introduction. My name's Julia Frisbie. I'm the Executive Director of Faith Foundation Northwest, and I always want to check and make sure people know what that is before I launch into my spiel, because otherwise, who is this person? What's she doing here? Faith Foundation Northwest was started as a support organization for the annual conference. We were used to be called the Oregon, Idaho, United Methodist Foundation, and it was started for two purposes, right? It came actually out of a general conference in the mid-'60s that's told every annual conference to start foundations in order to help churches manage long-term funds, to invest those funds for growth. And then the other thing we were supposed to do is promote planned giving. And those are two sides of the same coin, because most churches wouldn't have permanent assets if they didn't have planned giving. So that's our purpose. That's what we were supposed to do and what we were created to do. Today, the foundation also does loans. We have a mini grants program. We do stock gift transfers and some other kind of fun stuff. But the main reason we exist is to help churches be financially healthy for the long run. And your church invests its endowment with us and has done so for a number of years, and we're really thankful for that. It's a great partnership, and so this is like, here I am doing the other part of my work here in Tigard. And it's always great to have an excuse to come here, because then we get to put the toddler in his grandpa's arms for his nap, which is great. All right. So as I mentioned before, but I'm going to say it again into the microphone for anybody listening, this is way more fun when it's a conversation instead of a lecture. So I'm going to ask questions, and I'm going to pass the microphone. Like, if you want to answer a question, let's try to be inclusive for anybody online or watching later. So I'll pass you the microphone so that they can hear what you're saying. But let's remember, like, this is going to be put on YouTube, so it's public. So let's not share any sensitive personal financial information. Is that all right? All right. And Betsy's setting a good example. Feel free to get up and move around as needed. The big idea behind what I try to teach when I travel is that if you can give away money you haven't paid taxes on yet, you're golden. You're doing great. It's smart. And there's a couple different ways to do that. At the bottom of your handout, there are some special situations. If any of those apply to you, reach out to me later. My contact information's at the top of the handout. But we're not going to talk about the special situations because they only apply to a few people. We're going to talk about 3 strategies for giving away money you haven't paid taxes on yet that apply to most people. And the first one on your list is gifts of stock. Does anybody already give this way? Yes, some of us do. Okay, cool. And when you do that, do you transfer them? Does the church have a brokerage account? Yes. So you talk directly with Rick about doing that. Perfect. Are you willing to share kind of how that feels for you? Like, what do you actually have to do to make it happen?
Well, it was just kind of logical. We'd been going along paying taxes on money and then giving it to the church. And once we stopped and turned our brain on, it just made sense to not do that. So we did it last year or something?
Yes, we got the forms, and we really talked with Rick because he really helped us out. We got the forms, which we had to turn in to our broker, and they took care of it for us and handled the whole thing. So it was really simple. It was really simple for him because he did nothing.
Because I'm simple. I'm simple.
So what I'm hearing from you is it was a simple process. You did have to fill out some forms. That's very normal because, of course, everybody involved wants to know whether or not the receiving entity is a nonprofit. So your broker wants you to fill out forms, but that's doable. And then you talked with Rick, and how does it go for you, Rick, when you receive a gift like that?
It's pretty normal. You know, we probably get, I'd say 6 to 10 of those types of gifts during the year, and just work with Sarah to keep her appraised, the administrative assistant at the foundation, and make sure your broker gets the right form. So, but it's very easy for us.
So what actually happens is that stock gets moved from an individual's account into the foundation's account, and somebody tells the foundation to expect it, right? So, and when I say the foundation, I mean like me. We're a team of 4, so it's either me or Heidi or Sarah or Dulcetta. Somebody has to tell us it's coming because it just shows up in our Fidelity account. It's like 25 shares of Boeing, and we think, I wonder who that's for. But you guys are great. You've always done a great job of notifying us. So if you work with Rick, Rick knows how to get a hold of me, and he tells me how many shares to look for of which company. And then I sell it, and I write the church a check. The church gets a check in the mail, and there's no fee for it. The great thing is you give away, this is hot, you give away money that has been growing, right? If the stock has appreciated in value, all that value you never paid taxes on, which is great. If you were to withdraw it into your checking account, liquidate it, and take the money into your checking account, you'd have to pay cap gains. And then you could write a check to the church, but it would be silly. Why would you pay cap gains if you didn't have to? Transferring the stock directly from your broker to the church via the foundation doesn't cost you anything. It's just easy. Now I'm going to give you an aside. I am currently sitting on a nice mid-5-figure stock gift, and I have no idea who it's for. So if you donated stock for the benefit of Tigard UMC and didn't tell anyone, it might be time to speak up. I would love to get that to your church, but you have to tell me the number of shares and the company. We'll accept guesses later. Not really. We keep like a spreadsheet of the usual suspects. We go down the list and call people. This wasn't you, was it? But so far we don't know who. So just put a little mental bookmark. If you do it this way, you have to tell someone. By the way, you get a charitable deduction for the entire value of the gift, which is really nice. So let's say you give $10,000 worth of stock, you get to deduct $10,000 if you itemize on your taxes. So it's a nice deal. Any questions about that way to give? You can do this no matter how old you are, unlike the next thing on the agenda. Are we ready to move on? All right, I see nodding heads. Qualified charitable distributions. Does anybody give this way already? Oh, good. Okay, somebody plans to give this way. When she reaches that right age threshold, I plan to give this way when I reach the right age threshold because it's the best deal going, but you can't do it unless you're 70 and a half or older. And you don't get the full tax benefit until you're old enough to have required minimum distributions happening to you. Does anybody here have required minimum distributions going on? Some of us do, yep. Some of us don't yet. That's okay. If you have required minimum distributions, this is the smartest way to give, and I'll explain why. So think about the money in that IRA, whether it was always a traditional IRA or whether it used to be in a 401k or 403b or something and it rolled over into an IRA. Did you pay taxes on that money when you put it in? No. It was tax-free money that you funded the account with. And then it grew, right? It was in the market, it grew tax-free all along. Now it's worth way more than you put in. And you never had to pay taxes on any of that growth. But what happens when you take it out? You're taxed, yes. And how are you taxed? Is it cap gains or anything that you take from a traditional IRA, it just gets added to your adjusted gross income on your taxes, and you're taxed at the same rate as all of your other income, which is a big deal. And if you don't take any out at a certain point, if you don't take your required minimum distribution, you owe big fees. Oh, the toddler's waking up. We're on the clock. So if you take that money, let's say you've got a required minimum distribution and you know you have to take it, so you go ahead and take it and then you write a check to the church. You're paying money, you're paying taxes on the money that you took out of your IRA and then paying the church. But if instead you direct money from your IRA straight to the church and it never passes through your own checking account or your own savings account, then it bypasses taxes. You can't get taxed on that income because you never took that income. You gave it to the church and the church doesn't pay income tax, which is great, but it counts towards your required minimum distribution, which means if you give it away rather than taking it into your accounts, you're lowering your adjusted gross income by the amount of the gift, meaning there's less that you have to pay tax on. So, super smart way to give, because you didn't pay taxes on it in the first place, and then it grew tax-free, and then you can give it away tax-free. Now, you can't deduct it on your taxes. That would be double dipping. The IRS won't let you do that. So the tax benefit here isn't a big charitable deduction. It's just a reduction of your income. If you're planning to give money away anyway, and you're having to take required minimum distributions, you should give from your required minimum distributions instead of from your checking account. Nodding heads, or I'm still confused? Yes? Yeah. Right, especially in December and January. A gentleman who was standing right in front of me in worship turned around and said, "Oh, I hope you're going to talk about IRA giving, because that's how I give, and it's the best deal going." And I said, yes, it is the best deal going. Each broker is going to have kind of a different set of paperwork.
They usually require me to fill out some forms verifying that we're a nonprofit, maybe providing a letter from the IRS that even states that we are.
My understanding is that once your IRA custodian is familiar with the church, they're not going to ask for the forms every year. They're, oh yeah, that's a charity. We can make a distribution to them. Once you fill out the forms, then it's just as simple as telling them, please cut the check to the church, and they'll do it. Some people prefer to carry their check and put it in the offering plate. And so a gentleman that I knew in Anacortes, Washington, would always have his IRA custodian write a check to his church, Anacortes United Methodist Church, and mail it to his house. And he would take it, and he would open this mail, and he would get his check, and he'd put it in his offering envelope, and he'd carry it in and put it in the plate. So that's an option if that's important to you. What's important is that even though it went to his mailbox, it never went through his bank accounts. And that's what made it work. Okay. Any questions about this? Yes. Can you do this with an inherited IRA? Not unless you're 70 and a half years old. The question was, can you do this with an inherited IRA? And the age limitations on this gifting strategy are you have to be 70 and a half years old before you can contribute directly to charity from an IRA. So if you inherit that IRA after age 70 and a half, then yes. But if you're too young, lucky you, your body still works, but you can't take advantage of this gift. But I like to think about my IRA. I'm actively funding a traditional IRA, and I think about that as like, this is the charitable giving slush fund of my future. Yes?
Do you have to do this every year? Set it up every year? Do you need to set this up every year?
You would need to tell your IRA custodian to do it every year, but you probably only have to do the paperwork once. Because once they understand, and then once they're satisfied that the church is a charity, they probably won't keep asking you to prove that. Got it. This is one reason why I always encourage churches, and is anybody here on the finance team? Yes? I always encourage churches to create an opportunity for people to update their pledges in January or February. Because the people who are the IRA givers may not know how much they want to give until they know what their required minimum distribution is for the calendar year, which is based on the balance as of December 31st. So asking them in October or November how much they're going to give for the next year is like, oh, it could be a missed opportunity. It's hard for them to anticipate. So just something to think about if you're on the finance team. Give people a chance to revise that number or revisit that number, or even make a pledge if they haven't made one yet at the beginning of the calendar year.
We always allow people to adjust their estimate upward.
Good to know. Thanks, Rick.
How about downward?
All right, any other questions about this one before I move on? When I was doing this presentation 2 weekends ago in Lake Oswego, I got a question about the new Legacy IRA program that was part of the CARES Act. Have you heard anything about that, where you can fund a gift annuity from an IRA? Do you want to hear anything about that, or does it sound boring? A little curious? Do you know what a gift annuity is, a charitable gift annuity? That's where you pay for a promise. Like you transfer some money to a charity, and then they're going to give you money every year for as long as you live. Yeah. The CARES Act had so there's a new thing that's just coming into play that people are just beginning to be able to use, where you can one time in your life transfer up to $50,000 out of an IRA in order to fund one or more charitable gift annuities. You have to do it in a single calendar year, and then you can never do it again. So if you're curious about that, if an annuity is attractive to you, you should give me a call, and I'll get my plan giving lawyer on the line and give you some better information. But that kind of fits into the special situations that don't apply to everyone category. So we're not going to go deep into it. Just know that that these laws are changing, that they're always changing, and so it pays to pay attention every couple of years come to a workshop or do something else. Have me come talk and get the new information. Any questions about that before we move on to bequests? We'll move on to bequests because even if you don't have a stock account and you're not 70 and a half years old yet, you do need a will. Nod your heads and tell me you know that. Yeah, we know that. We all have our wills. They're totally updated. We've looked at them recently. They list all of our children and grandchildren and spouses accurately and their addresses, and it's all been considered. Yeah. Actually, not me. I haven't updated my will since my second child was born. Oops. We know that updating your will isn't something that you do every year, and that's okay. I want you to take this page home with you and file it with your will because it has some suggested bequest language on the back that I would like you to consider adding next time you revise it, whether that's a year from now or 5 years from now. But let's talk about giving through people's wills and trusts because I think it's the most common type of planned gift. And it's accessible to anyone, even if you're not sure there'll be any money left, because it doesn't have to specify a particular amount. Gifts through a will or trust can specify a percentage, or they can specify a residual or a contingency. If you flip the page over and look at the back side, that suggested bequest language, the first paragraph up here is one that I think everybody should add to their wills next time you do a revision, and that is to list the church as a contingent beneficiary of last resort. A contingent beneficiary of last resort is, take a guess. That's right. Here, say it into the mic, Carolyn. It's perfect.
If everybody else in your family has died somehow or is gone, then you have no one to leave it to, so it would be the church.
Absolutely. And who gets it if you don't specify a contingent beneficiary?
State of Oregon.
Absolutely. It's cheat. The state of Oregon would be so happy to accept your assets if no one else is available to inherit them. And I'm sure that all of us here would rather have those assets go to your faith community than to the state of Oregon. So that's what this top paragraph is for, and I think everyone should add it, no matter what else you do when you revise your will next. But I think it's also wonderful to consider the middle paragraph here about leaving an additional gift, and this suggested bequest language is kind of a choose-your-own-adventure thing, right? You have to first identify the beneficiary, but then you can describe the gift and talk about whether or not there are restrictions. In the identify the beneficiary section, you'll see I've put your church's full name and address. That's really important. If your church changes names or changes addresses sometime in the future, the date on your will, the date you signed it, combined with the name and address of the beneficiary is what's used to understand your wishes. Do you want me to tell you a silly story about that? Okay. So there was a couple who here's been to Wenatchee, Washington? Yes, Wenatchee. There was a couple who lived in Wenatchee their whole working lives. They raised their kids there. They were part of Trinity United Methodist Church in East Wenatchee. And at the end of their lives, they moved to Ballard, Washington to be closer to grandkids. And they were in Ballard for about 10 years. And there was a Trinity United Methodist Church in Ballard, too, which was great. They felt right at home. They plugged in and enjoyed taking their grandkids there on holidays. And at the end of their life, when their will was read, there was a really lovely gift in it written to Trinity United Methodist Church. And the Ballard folks said, "Oh, that's so nice. They remembered us in their will. How sweet." And the Trinity United Methodist Church in East Wenatchee folks went, "Wait a minute. They were here for 40 years. Of course they meant us." And it all came down to the date their will was signed. They signed it when they lived in Wenatchee, when they were active at Trinity United Methodist Church in Wenatchee. So that church received the gift. Now they shared a little bit with the church in Ballard, and everybody is still friends. Yay, connectional system. But that's why it's important to be really specific. With any bequest you make, not just to the church, but any other charity, any individual, put their name and their address. And then the next part of any bequest is to describe the gift. So up on your handout, you can see you can make a specific gift, like the sum of $10,000, or all my rights, title, and interest in the following described property. Please don't leave the specific gift of a boat to your church. Twice this summer, I have been asked by churches if they should accept gifts of boats. And I say, no, my grandpa always told me the boat is the hole in the water that you pour your money into. Don't accept the gift of a boat. Please make good choices. Talk to your finance team or talk to your pastor when you're considering including the church in your will to make sure if it's something other than just cash, that it's something the church is comfortable receiving. What happens, by the way, if you write something into your will that the church doesn't feel comfortable receiving? What does the church have to do?
I believe they can decline, like if you're made an executor of an estate, you can decline to do that.
Yeah, that's called disclaiming the gift, saying thanks, but no thanks. It's not like the church gets to negotiate and say, we don't want the boat. We would like just the fair market value of the boat. The church doesn't get to negotiate with you because at that point that your will is being enacted, you're not here anymore to negotiate with. So it's important to get it right. Another way to give gifts in your will is by percentage. So if you've always determined your giving during your lifetime by percentage, like you're working towards a tithe or you're a tither, you might consider continuing that beyond your lifetime and tithing to your church in your will or in your trust. Or one of my colleagues in Texas likes to ask the question to people gathered in workshops like this: have you considered the church in your will like a child or a grandchild? And I love that question. It made me think about how much love and energy I am pouring into my children right now, ages 7 and 2. You can imagine, it's a busy season. But then also it made me think about how much love and energy we pour into our faith communities over the course of our lives. And it's neat to recognize that. Got it. The other type of gift that is possible to leave when you're describing a gift is a residual gift, which is like saying if you're giving away the rest of your stuff, like item by item, like I'm going to give my boat to Steve, not to the church, and I'm going to give my bank account to Susie and my house to Mary, et cetera, you can put a residual gift, and then all the rest, residue, and remainder to a charity like the church. If you give the rest, residue, and remainder to a person, it can feel kind of like getting leftovers, right? It can be a little bit offensive to a person, but it's never offensive to a charity. So if your will is structured that way, it's something to consider. And then the last thing that a good bequest has, right? Clearly identify the beneficiary, then describe the gift, and finally specify whether or not there are any restrictions. Rick, would you rather get a restricted gift or an unrestricted gift?
Unrestricted.
Thank you. Every church would always rather have an unrestricted gift. If it's your goal to create an unrestricted gift, I'd really encourage you to say so in the gift instrument. Like in the will itself, you could write, this is an unrestricted gift. Or you could write, to be used at the church's sole discretion. Sole discretion is one of those lawyer buzzwords that we love to see. The reason I recommend specifying is that I guarantee like every person on the leadership council will have a different memory of what you would have wanted. So by saying in its sole discretion, you kind of prevent some drama and wheel churning. I have another, I'm going to pick on Anacortes again. There was a gift made for the UMCOR programs. That was not specific enough. It was really confusing, and it took the church, I don't know, most of a year to figure out what to do with a bequest that was made for the UMCOR programs. Yeah. If you want to restrict it, you need to say really clearly what you're restricting it for. Tigard has 3 categories in its endowment that you could name as how you want that gift to be allocated in the endowment. It could be program, it could be music, or it could be trustees. So that's nice that you already have established categories. If you have something else in mind, talk to your leadership team about whether or not it's doable. Do you want to hear a silly story about a restricted gift? Okay. So there was a retired piano teacher with perfect pitch who left a restricted gift to her church for the sole purpose of tuning every piano in the church twice a year. Her gift was pianos tuned in perpetuity. And that was great for a while because the church had like 8 pianos in it. It's like one in the sanctuary, one in the fireside room, one in the chapel, and one in like 5 different Sunday school rooms. And then at a certain point, like pianos started to wane. I don't know if maybe the preschool was using the Sunday school rooms, and I imagine the preschool teachers begging the trustees, please, please take the pianos away. We can't take it anymore. But I get a call from the church saying, okay, we're down to 3 pianos. What are we supposed to do? Tune them 4 times a year? It would have been better if that person could have made the gift to music ministries, right? So what I encourage donors to do is think about what's really important to you and then make it one category broader. You can always say to music ministries, please prioritize tuning the pianos. But if you just say tuning the pianos, then the church could get stuck in a decade or 2. Another example is a gentleman who planted a rose garden at his church in Richland, Washington, and left a gift in his will for perpetual care of the rose garden. And I wish that he'd said landscaping, because I think the roses have a lifespan, right? I mean, rose bushes don't live forever. And what if the church needs to expand their education wing and take up some of that footprint? So, everyone prefers unrestricted gifts. If a restriction is what makes the difference between you feeling ready to make a gift or not, that's okay. But think about what's important and then make it one category broader. And if it's really off the walls, talk to the pastor or the finance chair. Yes.
The program, music, and trustees. Is it also possible to give to the Tigard Endowment in unrestricted?
Typically, I would proportionally put it in all 3 categories, unless you specify that you really want it to go to program only or to trustee projects or music.
If you had received a gift that just said unrestricted to the Tigard Endowment, then you would divide it equally.
It's not equally, it's in proportion to how much money is in there, yeah.
Of course, it's also possible to give gifts through your will that aren't to the endowment, that are just to be used on a current basis, right? That's another category of restriction. You can restrict the purpose of the gift. You could also restrict the time period that the gift can be spent in. And it's okay to say it can be used on a current basis. But if you want to contribute towards the endowment, then the buzzwords we would look for, the legal buzzwords, would be endowment or perpetuity or permanent. You put any one of those in there, and then like Rick knows what to do. He's going to allocate it proportionately between trustees, music, and program in the Tigard Church endowment. Questions? Should we talk about the tax benefits of bequest giving before we go? Because I did say that my goal here was to save you money, and I suppose the tax benefit of a bequest would save your family, your loved ones money instead of saving you money. But there are still tax considerations. So one thing that I always talk about when I come to Oregon is the estate tax that's imposed by Oregon on any estate worth $1 million or more, which used to sound like a lot of money, but now with housing prices, especially in the Portland metro area, we all need to think about it. If you own a home in Oregon, you need to be aware of that $1 million estate tax exemption. Anything you own in excess of $1 million is taxable after your passing. And it's taxed on a sliding scale, kind of like income is, but the levels are different. If you're real worried about it, you should talk to a financial planning professional about your specific situation. Anybody know what the federal tax exemption is? Close? 10 or 12, 11 and a half? Look at your sheet and tell me. 13.61 million right now is the federal tax exemption. And if you're really, really worried that your estate that's in excess of 13.61 million is going to get taxed, then you should get your advice from a lawyer instead of for free at church. So that usually gets a bigger laugh, man. Okay, so the great thing about making a charitable gift through your estate is that that's deducted from the total value of your estate. If you're real close to one or the other cutoff, consider writing in bequests that bring the total value under the cutoff so that your beneficiaries don't have to worry about paying that estate tax at the end. The other way that the government gets money when things are willed from one party to another is to the beneficiaries. So beneficiaries are taxed on maybe I'll quiz you. So has anybody here ever inherited a bank account, like a checking account or a savings account? Yeah. Was it taxed or not? No, it wasn't taxed. There's no tax on checking or savings. What about a stock portfolio? Do you think a stock portfolio is taxed to the beneficiaries? Not when they receive it, but when they sell it, beneficiaries are taxed on what's called a stepped-up basis, which means they're not penalized for appreciation that's happened since you first bought the stock, but they're penalized for any appreciation that's happened since you died. So that they would pay capital gains on basically anything that's happened like since they were in charge of it. That's the IRS's way of making it fair. So stocks and bonds are taxed on a stepped-up basis. Same with, there's one other major category that's taxed on a stepped-up basis. Do you know what it is? Real estate. Ding, ding, ding. Yes. Real estate's taxed on a stepped-up basis. How about life insurance payouts? Are they taxed? Nope. Life insurance payouts? Nope. Boats? Boats don't appreciate is the correct answer. No, I just am cranky about boats this fall. I've answered one too many questions about boats. No, what about the big category we haven't talked about yet is retirement assets. Do you know how those are taxed when a beneficiary receives them? I know you do. You can't say it. Yes.
The beneficiary pays the taxes on distribution.
They pay the taxes on distribution, and is it taxed on a stepped-up basis, or do they just have to pay ordinary taxes?
Ordinary taxes based on what their income is.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you were to inherit an IRA, you have to take the money or you get a penalty, and it's added to your income and you get taxed as ordinary income. So the other type of bequest I would like people to consider is leaving those retirement assets to a charity instead of to an individual. And remember what I said, I'm actively funding my traditional IRA as my like charitable giving slush fund of the future. I think we should also look at those assets as charitable giving slush funds after our lifetimes, because those ones carry the heaviest tax burden if an individual inherits them. And so if you're planning to make any charitable gifts anyway, give them from that pot first, because it's a better deal for your beneficiaries if they inherit other things instead. Does that make sense? Sometimes I do a story problem here because my mom's a math teacher and I love story problems. And I tell a story, I say there's a donor who has a house and a stock portfolio and an IRA that are all worth about the same amount. And he wants to divvy it up equally between his son, his daughter, and his church. And so he wills the house to his daughter because she lives locally and she's going to live in it anyway. And he wills the stock portfolio to his church because he's already talked with Rick about it and he's used to giving stock to the church. And then he wills his IRA to his son. The question is, who is angry? The son. And what could he do instead? Give the IRA to the church and the stock to the son. Then the portions would actually be equal. Okay, that's all I've got. We can ask questions. We could chat. You liked being asked, who is angry? No, it's important. So giving's already a part of our DNA. It's part of who we are. And if we give like the right things to the right people, everybody benefits. So it's just a matter of like, it's almost like a matching game. And the big takeaway from today is give away money you haven't paid taxes on yet. And that sort of the secondary takeaway is if you have a traditional IRA, do your charitable giving from that first, during your lifetime and after your lifetime. So it's the best deal going.
Similar to an IRA, if one has like a non-qualified annuity that you just put money with an insurance company years ago to accrue interest that's deferred.
Not a charitable gift annuity, but just a regular.
But it's not a qualified IRA retirement plan. How does that work if you wanted to leave part or all of that?
So I think the question is if you have a regular annuity, not a charitable gift annuity, but just a regular annuity. Not an IRA annuity, a normal one, like the kind you'd buy from the bank. Or an insurance company. Yeah, I don't think those are great charitable gift vehicles because usually what's written into them is that the remainder that exists in the annuity pool at the time of your passing goes to the institution that sold you the annuity. That's why banks and insurance companies sell them. Oh. I don't know enough about that. I think that's if you're really curious, let's correspond about it, because I have lawyers I can ask, but I'm not the lawyer, and I don't know, and I don't want to make something up that's wrong. Yeah. Yeah, you could ask through the brokerage firm, but no, I don't have an answer, sorry. Anybody else want to stump me?
How many churches in the Oregon, Idaho, and Washington are affiliated with the foundation?
More than half of the churches in our Episcopal area have assets on deposit with the foundation. So we're like the asset manager of choice for most of them. And That's pretty cool. But I would say your church is definitely in the top 5% in terms of not only how healthy the endowment is, but like how healthy the team that manages the endowment is. It's always a real pleasure to work with your endowment committee and your finance committee because you guys really have it dialed in. You should be proud about it. It's really cool. It's a great program. In fact, I brag about you when I go other places. People are like, oh, what if, should we make categories within our endowment that people can choose to give to? And I say, well, that's what Tigard does. They've got these 3 categories and it seems to be working really well for them. I hope that's okay. Any other questions? I will stick around and take the mic off if you have a private question. But thanks so much. This has been big fun.